I'm Art Krueger from the Krueger-Norton Sugarhouse, Shrewsbury, Vermont. I've been making maple syrup for about 40 years. We are impressed by this new tubing system, a high vacuum gravity tubing system developed by Tim Wilmot of the Proctor Maple Research, University of Vermont. This system uses gravity only, doesn't require a vacuum pump or a releaser or energy. So it saves us considerably in energy costs and equipment costs, and of course gravity never quits, so we don't have to worry about an equipment failure shutting us down. We're very impressed by this. We have a mountainous sugar bush of about 2,000 taps. We converted 10% of it to this system last year, and we're very impressed with the results. This year we're converting the entire sugar bush to this new system. This new system requires us to use 3/16 inch tubing instead of the normal 5/16 inch tubing we've been using all these years. So we have to adopt fittings to it. The industry hasn't quite caught up with this new system, so there aren't any spouts or tees or anything that fits this tubing. So we have been working with Tim Wilmot and have adopted many tricks of the trade and methods of how to adopt this system. This video will give you an overview of what we found. We are going to assemble all the stuff we made into a line of drops and show how this system works. Here, of course, we have the 3/16 tubing. This is a 500-foot roll. It's much smaller and lighter, obviously, than the 5/16 tubing. We have a reel that will dispense it, that's homemade, that you can make, and we'll show how it goes together a little bit later. This will be the end loop, goes on the final tree at the end. It has our pressure gauge, it has a drop in it. If it's a fat tree, we can add another drop very easily. The pressure gauge gets tied around the tree and always in an upright position, because if it's hanging over it, it'll catch water. Pressure gauge. It's the vacuum gauge. It's not a pressure gauge. And to fasten the end loop to the tree, we have a piece of old used tubing. Because we've just taken down our old system, we have plenty of this old used tubing. And this is not a conventional way of using this end system, but it works very well. And I have even an old leftover fitting from the old used tubing, so it's fairly economical to do it this way. The end loop is dead. It's cut off from everything else, so that if a squirrel chews on the end loop, it doesn't hurt anything. So this is how we're gonna take this up into the woods with us. And this will be on the end of the line on the top tree. The line will fasten to the main, when we get down to the main line, the line will be hitched with this hollow braid cord, which we will string the 3/16 into with, it works as a Chinese finger. We'll show you how that works. These are the drops. I keep them in groups of 25. We will put on a total of maybe 30, depending on the whole line. This is much higher than you are used to putting on your 5/16 line. We will use up to 1,000 feet of this tubing to make one line. So to use a lesser number than 25 or 30 becomes a little silly, because you're putting in an awful lot of line for a small amount of drops. I think probably the smallest line I have is about 600 feet, and the longer ones are 1,000 feet. We have found, or Tim Wilmot up at UVM has found, that you can go up to 36 drops on a line and everything seems to work very well. We have our tubing tool, which is an old standard tubing tool. The difference is that I've taken my handheld grinder and I've ground down these small enough. It takes a considerable amount of grinding so that they will now fit 3/16 tubing. So I can work from 3/16 to 5/16 with the same system. I have a loop so it'll string over my shoulder so I can carry everything. This will work I can do this alone. It works better with two people. It takes about 2 hours for two people to put in one of these drops, and longer if I work alone. One of these lines of drops. So you can get that. So you're going to spend a considerable amount of time up in the woods putting this stuff in if you choose to go to the system. Standard tubing tool that I've modified to take the 3/16 tubing. I've taken my handheld grinder and I've ground down here and up here. I've ground down these clamps so that they're small enough now, fit tight enough together to take the 3/16 tubing. I have put springs on the clamp adjuster, the vice grip adjusters, so that they more or less stay, and I can make them fit either the 3/16 or the 5/16 tubing. There are other ways of doing this. Some people put tape on here, material on here. I find this better because I can switch back and forth between one and the other, and I haven't lost any function. So this is just a modification I advise you to make. I also use a shears. I like this one because it's red handled, and if I lose it I can refind it. You always, if you're in this business, you lose a lot of these in the woods. It's not an anvil shears, it goes by and by, so it's easy to sharpen with a file. I like to keep everything nice and sharp. And a little bit of lubrication on these also might help. I'm just going to spray on a little WD-40 onto the various moving parts of this. And also I'll spray a little bit onto the clipper. This is a pile of 5/16 tubing and extraneous main line that we pulled out of the woods. We're going to try to, there are places that recycle this. I don't know what they make out of it, so we're going to try to get rid of it that way. It isn't really worth very much, except that as I can use a piece or two here and there as my end line loops. We want to get it out of the woods because it just gets in the way and gets caught. You get caught in it and neaten things up. We have a lot less main line with this system than we had with the old system because we don't want to lose gravity potential with having main lines going up the hills. So the main lines are mostly low and in the valleys, and everything else is with this sideline. So we're taking a lot of main line out too. I will use pieces here and there. I don't know quite what I'm going to do with all of it, but this is part of the leftovers. There's still some left up in the woods, and there's another pile elsewhere. Here we are at the top of my main line. The main line has been cut back considerably. This old main line still on the ground here. I bolt my main lines into the side of the tree with a lag bolt. I find this a very cheap and good way of doing it. Does less damage to the tree. I like these tensioners for the wire. And these, of course, will go up like this, and there'll be some fittings in here. I'm going to valve everything off so that I will be able to wash everything. But that'll come later. The lines coming down from the bush are connected with these hollow braid cord, and as you can see, there's the finger, Chinese finger in here, and I can make tension in these very easily just by working them up and keep my tension that way. I want to have good tension on it, but I don't want to have it zinging. I don't want to have too much tension. If I try to have too much tension, I won't be able to hold the tubing in my tubing tool, and nothing will work. So we're ready to start. All the trees that are near the end of the main line can't go into the main line here because I won't have any gravity to drive this system. So these jump over this and go way down the main line a long way so that they can get enough drop for this to work. This system needs drop. We would like to see 40-50 feet between the last tap and where we connect to the main line. That's not always possible to get, but that's what we'd like to see. So we will run a lot of main line right now up into the woods, 400 feet or so, so we'll have enough drop before we connect to our first tree. So we'll have enough drop to drive the system. So that's a very important consideration. Now, we found that to roll this tubing out, to keep everything packaged, we're cutting the packaging away, finding the end of the tube. We're going to do one more thing. We're going to insert the tube into the hollow braided rope and make a Chinese finger, and this will hold the tubing in place. I like these Chinese fingers with the hollow braided rope to hold tubing. I've used this technique for years with the 5/16, and the same 1/4 inch braided rope that I use for 5/16 works perfectly for the 3/16. And here's the result. You can tighten the tube from here with no trouble. It holds well. We're climbing good here. We haven't reached our first tree yet. David's helping me keep tension on the line. Okay, now we're coming to the first trees that we're going to tie in. We have both 1-tap trees and 2-tap trees. A 1-tap tree is less than 18 inches in diameter. Means when I wrap my arms around it, my hands will touch. A 2-tap tree is greater than 18 inches in diameter. And this might even be a 3. I'll call it 3. We have 2 other lines that happen to be going by here. They already have up above us 30 drops on, so I think that's quite sufficient. Now I will try to keep a mental count of what I'm doing as I wend my way up through the woods so that I get to about 30 before we stop. I'm trying to do this in a systematic manner, so I've already put a couple of lines over there. Everything on that side is already done, and I'm working over. The system is very important here. You want to get all the trees, and if you don't, you're going to get very confused. All right, now we're gonna stop here and add the next piece of roll of tubing, and we've got to go find the next roll of tubing. And this it's very handy to kind of make a clove hitch. It's not quite a clove hitch. There's a lot of friction in this tubing, so it doesn't take very much to make it stick. Oh, I'm lying. Couple wraps should do it. So now we have kept our tension, and we're going to go back and get some material. All right, this is our reel. This is one of Krueger's unpatented inventions, so you can steal it without worrying about patent infringement. You have some nuts and bolts that you better put in your pocket and keep safe, because if you lose them in the leaves, you'll spend a lot of frustrating time looking around. This is made of a few pieces of white pine and some threaded rod. And these pieces are joined. I find 3 5/16 and 1 7/16, I think it is. Worked very well. These are just simply bolted on. Nothing complicated. These ends are peened over so I don't lose the nuts. A few washers here and there. So I take the reel, put the reel on, then I put the top pieces on. I had these all glued together. The glue didn't stand up very well to the moisture, but I find it doesn't matter at all. Tight fit. And then I find all my other pieces. A little piece of pipe. This is all stuff I found in the shop. Washer. Pipe. So top washer. And I put on 2 nuts tightened against each other. I don't tighten them very tight, just finger tight. And that seems to be enough to make this thing hold together. With 1 nut, it'll come off. Okay, so this will reel, and then I simply, again, cut away the plastic. I find the ends of the tubing in here somewhere. Here's the end. Now I like the ends to be squared off before I put the joints in. So this is the end, and we have to take this garbage with us, so that's why it'd be handier if there was less of it. We can leave the drops here, but we should take the end loop with us. All right, here we are at the end tree. We're going to clip away a little bit of this beech and stuff that's growing. I should be in here with my chainsaw and cut this out, but I haven't gotten here yet. This is our end loop that we've been talking about. And here's the vacuum gauge. And we're going to just simply tie the vacuum gauge through the tree, high as I can, and do our best to keep it upright. It's going to take some arranging here. And for those of you who have animals, a piece of baling twine is almost the right length. On fat trees we have to use 2. Right, now here I'm just going to put the end loop on the tree. Now, I can't adjust the tension from the end loop doing it this way, but I've never found that necessary. Now this tool is adaptable, of course, since I did it both. I have it set up for each one, size of tubing, and I find that quite handy. I think if I tried another method of adapting the tool, like putting tape on there, I'd have trouble in places like this. And now we have the end loop on the tree. We're going to have to adjust this by pulling it around so it kind of sits upright. And I'm going to want to take the 3/16 and attach it to the end loop here.
There you go.
We've used not quite 1,000 feet of tubing. Oh, a little more.
More tension?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll gain a little here. All right. Now this is installed. And I look here for my gauge. I want to play with it a little bit. Yeah, I guess that'll have to do. So we're all set to tap in here, read the gauge, and now we've got to put the drops in on this line here. We're going to put some drops in. Now we lost a little tension here, but where we put the drops in, we can easily regain it by cutting a little bit of line out. If we were perfect, we wouldn't have to do that, but I find perfection is pretty rare in this business. So I'll use my tubing tool here. Note the use of the teeth. Now this line has quite a bit of friction with the trees, so we'll probably have to adjust this in several places because we can't pull on this whole thing and get it all off at once. So we got the extra tubing. Maybe I'll find a use for it, probably not. And having my drops in 25 count bundles helps me keep count of what I've done. So when I use the bundle up, I know I've used 25. Obviously. These you put on just like you put on the old drops. And I like to squeeze them up real tight. Voila! This is the final assembly of the end. I made a manifold here going into the main line. And I have half-inch valves, half-inch nipple, very cheap valves. And then they go into a star. A three-way star is best. This is just stuff that was left over. You can put up to 4 onto a star. I wouldn't put any more than that. Now, the star, this 3/16 tubing is adapted to 5/16 and it goes into the star. The idea here is when I want to wash, I can close some of these valves and only wash on one star. I found last year that I was able to wash up to 4 lines without any trouble, but I want to try to wash more than that. I got into trouble and I couldn't get my air-water mixture. What I do is I blow air with a compressor into water coming off of the house service. Water pressure from the house service is actually from a spring, is about 50 psi where I tap off, and I just blow air from a compressor into that. I blow that up and it will go all the way up to the tops of the lines, so I can clean without any trouble. This line is vented, and the idea is that this is going back to an older system, but the idea is that we don't need to keep air in our main line after we to go down. The main line is not under a vacuum anymore, so we don't care if things leak a little bit. Nothing has to be, so it can be a little bit we can be a little bit careless with this stuff. and the air will go off and we'll just have liquid going down the main line. Here's another view of the manifold showing the vent. The vent's valved, so we can turn the vent off for washing. You can also see tubes going by the manifold. All these tubes are going down to a tank near the sugar house, so I can get sufficient gravity on those. These lines don't start high enough to get sufficient gravity by the time I got here. So this is just a really different system than what you're used to. All right, here's another example of the same manifold going into one of my tanks, my storage tanks. I like to use these old dairy tanks for storage. They tend to be cheap and they work very well. This is a road crossing. As you can see, it can go way up high and then across the road. It has no trouble going up high and crossing a road like that, or crossing anything like that. I reckon that's about 14 feet in height. We have, since the only requirement is that the end of the line be lower than the beginning of the line, and then it will work. These lines have 20 and 22 inches of vacuum on them, so this works fine.